You are listening to TMI for the week of October 29th, 2018. I really wanted to stop talking about Trump this week. But as always, we can't go 2 days without insanity.
I'm a nationalist.
Well, an old friend of mine sent me an email. I just said we're stuck on Trump these days. Oh. And he started going into some pretty cynical stuff about that. I think he was basically suggesting that the demographic change at the end of the baby boomers seems to have brought back in a callback to the times before the baby boomers. And this is the era of fascism and neo-social, what did they call it when it was socialism in Nazi Germany? The Social Democrats?
Oh, yeah.
Just
national socialists.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
Anyway.
A callback to a time before the baby boomers when communism, totalitarianism, fascism, strongmen, dictators. It just made me think, we could really be ending an era of responsible government, an era of the end of democracy.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it a few weeks ago. And I think a few podcasts ago, earlier in the summer. This really feels like the death of something like this.
Yeah.
This is when rational thought goes out the window, and we can't have.
Well, no matter what, that his base, 30% of the population, it doesn't matter. Like he said, he could go out and shoot somebody and still they'd all cheer at his rallies. So my theory was that if you think of the bell curve and if you assume it's symmetrical, and if 37% of us are too stupid to vote in a proper way, in an adult way, because of an IQ or educational challenge.
Well, it's too lazy.
You can extrapolate forward, if you believe the bell curve is symmetrical, that 37% on the other side of the bell curve are the people who calling for healthcare for all and the end of stupid wars and not backing dictators and civility, etc. That leaves, it's 74.
Okay.
So that leaves 26% of the population is a swing vote in the middle of the bell curve.
Okay.
That seems to be the segment of the population that's uninterested in voting.
Are you subtly suggesting we should have a electoral system such as the one down in Australia?
I was thinking there should be a tax break.
That's your carrot.
Well, because in Australia it's supposed to be like illegal, or you get a ticket or a fine if you don't vote.
Yeah.
Seeing as that we're being destroyed by capitalist, what's the C word that's...
I'm not saying the C word.
Wait up.
Which C word are you referring to? There's
corruption.
A number of C words. Corruption. Wow, yes.
The combination of capitalism and corruption.
Donald Trump?
To be what we're living through. So why not a tax break? Why not $1,000 credit deduction? $1,000 income deduction. And this is interesting. So it wouldn't make any difference for rich people knocking $1,000 off their income. But for poor people, this could put them into a different tax bracket.
Well, if you're making under $20,000, you're not paying any taxes. So it would be primarily for those making between $200,000 to $20,000. So,
well, an entry job in the blue collar market is sort of $20,000. So, all right,
that's what $20,000 for an entry job. You can't even survive on $20,000 in Toronto.
No, explain that to my accountant. Okay, so how about a tax break?
A tax break,
$1,000.
Yeah.
And it kind of means if you don't vote, well, they're giving away, trillions of dollars to rich people and your trickle down. I was going to say, Maybe everyone's taxes goes up a bit, and if you vote and you get the tax credit, it comes back down to what it should be. Or, yeah, so if you keep the taxes as they are, but you qualify for this credit that you get if you vote, your taxes go down $1,000. So it's a tax giveaway to working people who vote.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that sounds very un-Republican. But, you know.
It's incentivizing.
Well,
it's a carrot. It's a carrot versus the stick.
Publicly, this is such a no-brainer, like first past the polls, or is that the proper phrase?
Yeah, first past the post.
Yeah. Totally public-funded elections.
Yeah, totally transparent.
A limit of 5 to 10 years of working for anybody who's lobbied the government, not just your department, the government.
Mm-hmm.
See, yeah. I don't know why it's fair if you work for municipal government for more than, 5 years, and then provincial government for more than 5 years, and then federal. Now you've got 3 pensions. I'll bet you then if you go to the Senate, you get another pension, so now you've got 4 pensions. Why do they have to add on to each other like that? There's no, it sounds nice, a thank you for your service, but where's the fairness in just adding pension to pension to pension to pension? How is that fair?
I've never, to be honest, I've really never thought of it. But at first blush,
well,
I mean, you have contributed to all those pensions.
For 5 years?
Well, I mean,
5 years, a whole lifetime of contributing to a pension, sure.
But I mean, you're only getting what you've basically put in.
Really?
So I mean, the amount.
What's your pension if you've been a member?
It's based on 5 years. So it would be based on 5 years.
I thought they were making like a couple $100,000 a year on their pension. It's a 70% of your original. Isn't that how pensions usually go? Like you get like 70% of what your actual salary was from age 65 on. But you're saying it's scaled back to reflect 5 years of contributions, though that would be okay. Then you know what you say? Never mind. But I don't think that's the case. I think that if you get a municipal pension and a provincial and a federal pension, I think you're talking big bucks there. But we should be Googling this.
Yeah, as far as I don't know. Again, I've never really thought of this before, so this is just off the top of my bald head. But it's again, you're not. So if you've worked 30 years, it'll reflect 30 years.
Okay.
If you're working 5 years, it's only going to reflect 5 years.
All right. Well, this is a Googleable term.
It's not going to be.
We should have a bet. I'm arguing that you qualify for the full pension after 5 years. And I'll bet you that it's prorated, as you say, based on number of years worked up to 5. But if you cross 5, you get a full pension for whatever tier of government you were in. But we're going to have to look into that in the future show.
Yeah. If you're getting full pension for only 5 or 6 or 7 years, that's just no.
In the United States, they're the only ones with proper health care. Those politicians. Anyway, okay. I'm just saying. I noticed that when I was a kid, and I guess I should have Googled it. Then there was no Google. That's my excuse.
No, you get better health care if you have money. If you have a good health insurance plan, you get really good, and then you have the money to go to, say, the United States, the Mayo Clinic, or wherever the latest things are being done. I mean, if you can afford it, fantastic. We get the basic here. You hope. And it's done properly, you hope. But anyway, next.
This is just a little story about notes.
Notes?
TDS. Oh, Trump Disorder Syndrome.
Oh, okay.
Well, Trump is complaining that all this distraction that we're going through with the bombing of Democrats is distracting from his message about his recent idea, the drug plan. So the only thing wrong with the bombings. And another thing. So it's not terrorism because it happened in the United States. Legally, it's not terrorism unless it happens in Lebanon or Yemen or Syria or. Isn't that? I just never really realized that. It's something. It's abroad, apparently, according to the Americans.
Well, I heard one pundit speaking on one of the channels this week. I don't know which one. And I overheard him say, "Well, look, a shark terrifies people. So does that mean the shark is a terrorist? No, of course not." And I just wanted to,
Okay. Well, after Jaws, I was afraid to get into the tub. I was 10 years old. So any act that scares an entire society into having a certain viewpoint, well, no, that's not a good definition. It's an act perpetrated against a society in order to further an agenda.
Precisely.
And this would qualify the bombings.
Exactly.
Yeah, but not in America. Okay.
Well, your state is heading the wrong way when you're in denial and you can't label something terrorism. So I mean, it's really sad, and it's even more sad that
it's not terrorism because he's white.
They're targeting Obama, they're targeting Clinton, former National Security Agency head, the former CIA head. So you have 4 different really high-ranking government people. 2 of them were heads of state that have been targeted. The big debate in the States amongst the right is, this is a red flag, or this is not terrorism. We can't call this terrorism. I'm sorry, if you want to show the rest of the world how fractured you are, that debate amongst the right, red flag, you can't call this terrorism, and 2 former heads of state, your 2 presidents were targeted. Oh, wow. I'm just blown away, man, by the state of disarray that the ununited states of America seems to be going through right now. It's sad. So.
Okay, let's have a fact off on...
Fact off.
What's his name? One thing not in my notes.
What's
his name?
Yeah.
Caesar Sayak. Is that right?
Caesar Sayak. That sounds like something out of the movie The Usual Suspects.
Okay, so apparently he was claiming that he was associated with Native Americans.
Okay.
How does that fit into white supremacy? I don't think white supremacists dig Native Americans. But, okay, so I'll start the fact off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll cheat.
Where is
two,
that?
Two from
Are
the
you
top.
trying to follow? What's that girl that lady that just got fired this week for making stupid comments? Here, I got a white supremacist on speed dial. Let's call him. Hold on a second. Hello.
Okay, so he claimed to be Native American.
Uh-huh.
And then, so just to show how the game is played. So you don't want to give a bunch of facts. It's just, we're going to fact off on them here. It's a game. Okay, let's see what we've collected, what we know. Okay. His father's from the Philippines.
Okay.
Your turn.
He's not tall.
Okay. His mother's from Italy.
He loves Italian cooking.
You're supposed to counter with a fact you've learned about.
I don't know anything about this guy.
Really?
I wouldn't be able to know. I have no idea. I don't know. I thought this was like some game show kind of thing.
So
I'm supposed to give you the opposite. Or
as a pizza delivery guy.
Okay.
His employer managed a pizza store, and he delivered pizza. And she's a lesbian.
Okay.
And these journalists who were asking her questions were basically not hiding their surprise. Why did you keep this guy in your employ?
Okay.
And so they used him only at night.
Okay.
They never got a complaint from their clients.
Okay.
He kept it on the down low. He was one of the best employees.
Okay.
He did say some stuff like that she would burn in hell and stuff like that concerned her, but I guess part of if you're LGBT, you're asking that people just accept you for who you are. And there's that same kind of, as long as you don't get complaints, and he does his job well. So, but he left that job because he was getting a job driving a hazardous waste truck.
Okay.
So just off the top there, considering all that's happened, can you imagine him driving a hazardous waste truck and what kind of situation we'd be in had he figured out a way to use the waste truck to cause a terrorist incident?
Yeah, I mean that's a big jump in assuming.
And what kind of psychological profiling are you doing if
But
you were going to hire him to drive a waste truck? He has a whole list of charges and convictions against him.
You'd be remiss not to look at all that, and also going on his social media sites as well. I mean, I think you'd have to be doing a thorough background check on an individual.
Well, it turns out now we're not really sure that he ever was offered that job.
Okay.
It's part of the creating his own world out of lies. Who does that remind you of?
It's a personality disorder. Okay.
Well, he calls himself a Native American, but he's really from the Philippines.
So Philippine Italiano heritage.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
So, I mean, everything, so, he was or wasn't going to do this other job. He left the pizza job to do, because he had passed all these courses that would have him be a truck driver. Bomb threats, battery, fraud, drugs. He's a Republican. Those are all indictments. That's sort of a look at some of the charges he's faced.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a picture of what we usually see in these bombings. The Olympic bomber, the bombing of the Robert R. Murrow building, the guy who just shot at 600 people in Las Vegas. It's always the same, right?
Well,
we're not being honest. I mean, if you make an FBI profile, it paints apple pie in the sky, perfect American citizen, right? Doesn't it? Tough guy, lifts weights, watches sports, big Trump fan, make America great again, white supremacist. It's always the same.
No, I don't know. I don't know. It's not like I'm seeing a lot of multinationals coming out to support Trump.
Do you see a nice, polite Aziz Ansari type blowing up FBI buildings? Do you see...
No.
Now, those guys who hid out in the trunks of cars who were shooting with their high power on, but I think there were two black guys.
Yeah.
So we want to be editing that
Careful.
out. Yeah.
Redaction.
I always stutter when I have to do edits. Redact. Editing. I don't like to edit too much.
Now you're going to have the Stuttering Society of America phoning you and demanding that you...
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I, there's some of my notes, but we have some clips.
Oh,
well, do you want to do
it
clips?
Is very, yeah, sure, let's do clips. But you're spot on with regards to most of the tragedies that occur, or most of the mass casualty incidents that happen in the United States or the un-United States of America, are middle-aged white guys with some sort of personality disorder. So it's a little discerning.
You saw the pictures of his van.
I'm getting all my information.
What do you live in a jar? I mean, there's the whole internet's full of the white van with these stickers on all the windows. I mean, there's the O.J. Simpson.
I've been out in the market this morning talking to my people,
feeling the air and stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I've been out and about doing my groceries.
Yeah.
So,
meanwhile, shit's falling apart here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sun's still shining through the clouds.
All right. Well, we'll see. They'll
Okay,
ban
so
that.
play the clips. Yeah, let's do it.
This is a more sarcastic tone than last week. Okay.
Okay, let's hit it, Johnny.
Well, let's start with this.
1 Adam 12, 1 Adam 12, a 211 in progress. 1 Adam 12, handle code 3.
So, playing Name That TV show theme doesn't work if they say the name.
Of 1 Adam 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although it was a nice flashback.
Poor choice. Badly constructed idea for a game show.
Cue the crickets.
The Khashoggi case.
Mm-hmm.
MBS. The Saudi prince.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the week, we were still in the Khashoggi era.
Mm-hmm.
The big villain was the new Saudi prince.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that front page picture of him shaking the hand of the son at the palace. It was again one of those pictures that you see that capture the fire, the spirit, the soul.
Khashoggi's son, who was in Saudi Arabia at the time, was summoned to the palace.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw a very tense handshaking between the son of Khashoggi and this Saudi prince.
If looks could kill.
As somebody's pointed out that he left there without knowledge of where his father's body was and without permission to leave Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. But as the week wore on, I think by Friday he had actually left Saudi Arabia. But Trump was still busy putting jobs ahead of lives.
It's $110 billion. I believe it's the largest order ever made. It's 450,000 jobs. It's 500,000 jobs, American jobs. I would prefer that we don't use as retribution canceling $110 billion worth of work, which means 600,000 jobs.
I think it's over 1 million jobs. That's not helpful for us to cancel an order like that.
So it went from about 40,000 jobs to, by the end of it, 1 million jobs. In little steps. Baby steps.
Trump. It's always a source of nervous giggles,
Okay.
Again,
And starting the week, we were hot talking about the caravan.
And what's happening right now as a large group of people, they call it a caravan. Do you know how the caravan started? Does everybody know what this means? I think the Democrats had something to do with it, and now they're saying, I think we made a big mistake.
It's always the Democrats. It's the Democrats. It used to be the communists, but now it's the Democrats. That's the new spooky dude in the room.
So it's more overt racism.
I'm old-fashioned. It's called a nationalist. And I say, really, we're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
That's a word with two meanings. Like, are you into, American products and American ethics and way of life and blue jeans, or is it a word that's become synonymous with white supremacy?
Booted thugs carrying torches in the night and hurting people. That's what my definition is. You can be patriotic and stand up for made in America or made in Canada or made in the UK or made in the European Union or wherever you want. But to be a nationalist, that connotation in my mind's eye, I mean, maybe I'm just an old middle-aged white man, but to me means the contrary. It means evil, short-sighted, narrow-minded, intolerant.
All right, a flashback to the past.
Uh-oh.
George Bush, McCain, and Obama.
In our discourse degraded by casual cruelty. At times it can seem like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces bringing us together. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism, forgetting the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America.
To abandon the ideals we have advanced around the globe, to refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of Earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems is as unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past that Americans consigned to the ash heap of history.
A politics of fear and resentment and retrenchment takes hold. And demagogues promise simple fixes. They start undermining norms that ensure accountability and try to change the rules to entrench their power further. And they appeal to racial nationalism that's barely veiled, if veiled at all. Sound familiar?
Earlier this week, Jim Acosta asked Trump about nationalism.
Just to follow up on your comments about being a nationalist, there is a concern that you are sending coded language or a dog whistle to some Americans out there that what you really mean is that you're a white nationalist.
I've never even heard that. I cannot imagine that. You mean I say I'm a nationalist? No, I never heard that theory about being a nationalist. I've heard them all. But I'm somebody that loves our country.
I don't know what happened to that.
That's just self-explanatory. I'm just...
All right. Switching back to Turkey, the sort of long-awaited announcement by Erdogan of Turkey. And Erdogan, he's the president or prime minister? How does that work?
President. I think he's president.
And the evidence that we have so far collected indicate that Jamal Khashoggi was slain in a vicious, violent murder. And there are indeed strong signs that the incident was not a momentary issue or a momentary result of something that erupted on site, but rather the result of a planned operation. And now there is official acknowledgement that there was a murder. Where is the body? Why do we still not have the body?
As far as I know, the director of the FBI has heard the audio tape.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that's where that is.
There was a double that was there as well and was walking around afterwards to try to... So, I mean,
and they planned
to obfuscate the truth. Yeah. So, I mean, this is all premeditated. Everything that they're saying, the Saudis, it just gets more comical. Unfortunately, it's a dark comedy, but it's just. And then the United States says, "Well, we're putting embargoes on the people who were responsible for the murders." Well, they've arrested 18 people. Whether they're the real people who were responsible or not remains to be seen. So putting embargoes on these 18 people that have been arrested seems to be a moot point.
So now that we know what we know, Trump had some notes on how to conduct a successful cover-up.
Original concept. It was carried out poorly, and the cover-up was one of the worst in the history of cover-ups. And they had the worst cover-up ever. The cover-up, if you want to call it that, was certainly no good. The cover-up was horrible. The execution was horrible. But they should have never been at an execution or a cover-up, because it should have never happened.
Is this an Abbott and Costello or a Laurel and Hardy? Is this a Jerry Lewis thing?
Wait, it's not over.
Oh, no. Jim Carrey?
So this is kind of a flashback to...
Austin Powers?
when Trump went to Russia and got assurances from Putin.
Mr. President, if the Crown Prince is implicated, how do you plan to hold him accountable? Do you think he should lose his license?
Well, we'll have to do something, but I will say this. I spoke with the King. I spoke with the Crown Prince yesterday, and he strongly said that he had nothing to do with this. This was at a lower level.
Does it remind you of anyone? Yeah.
I was just going to say, where have I heard that almost exact quote before? He swears, he assures me that blah, 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 fill in the blank. Wow. And okay, just a quick question here, just for clarification purposes. I was under the impression from the news reports that the king is only conscious about an hour or two every day.
Yeah.
So, not knowing what the heck is going on there, how is it that Donald Trump had a conversation with the king?
Wow. Never thought of it. Okay. All right. Trump's even Trump.
I've been going around lately saying the Democrats are the party of crime.
No one should carelessly compare political opponents to historical villains.
Obama is the founder of ISIS.
There is one way to settle our disagreements. It's called peacefully at the ballot box.
They got so many people voting illegally in this country. It's a disgrace, okay? It's a disgrace.
The media also has a responsibility to set a civil tone and to stop the endless hostility. I'm not going to give you a question. You are fake news. We must accept the verdicts of elections.
Folks, it's a rigged system. It's a rigged system, and we're going to beat it. We're going to beat it.
So let's put it all together, right? Let's put it all together. Let's get along. Great country. We're going to get along.
What do you got to say to that, smart guy? Just say no.
Just say no, yes.
Joe Biden this week.
Uh-huh.
My hope is this recent spat of these, who knows exactly what they were, but these pipe bombs being mailed might wake everybody in my business up a little bit and realize that we have to begin to put this country back together again. This division, this hatred, this ugliness, it has to end. Words matter.
Joe Biden.
Yeah, no, he's echoing the same sentiment that Obama had said in the earlier clips. And I was just thinking, wow, that's I wish he was about 20 years younger and he could run for president now.
This week at a Trump rally.
Mm-hmm.
Fake polls. I call them fake polls. And I can do the greatest thing for our country. And on the networks and on different things, it will show bad. They will take it back because fake news. They're called globalists. They like the globe. I like the globe, too. But we have to take care of our people. We have to. Globalists.
Lock them up. But he's doing full showmanship. Like, I don't know if you noticed the yelling in the background, but he's looking to the right and repeating the words of something said by someone he's pointing at on the left. Mm-hmm. Like, he's got all the moves.
Mm-hmm. It's like he's like an old vaudevillian actor, you know, up on stage, you know, with the hat and then, you know, exactly parroting whatever's said in the audience and, you know, doing his little song and dance.
Here's another little quote from him.
And negative attacks, you know that, only serve to drive people apart and to undermine healthy debate. We must unify as a nation in peace, love, and in harmony. The media has a major role to play, whether they want to or not. And they do indeed. They have a major role to play as far as tone.
Can't make this up.
Well, you know, this is why they just did a survey just a few weeks ago. And they're saying that the survey indicates that Canadian views on the United States have diminished in the course of the trade talks, with the lowest favorable ratings for our southern neighbors since the 1980s. 49% polled said they had a very or mostly favorable view of the states, down from 62% from June 2016.
Well, he's complaining the rhetoric is driving us apart, and yet here's a little flashback.
Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind. He's my guy.
After promising most recently that as soon as he can and before the election, he's going to bring forward a new round of tax cuts.
Before the election, Congress isn't even in session before the election. Just made stuff up. They all say they'll protect your pre-existing conditions. The current Justice Department is in court right now trying to strike those protections down. So that's not spin, that's not exaggeration. That's just lying.
President Obama.
The rhetoric that comes out of Pennsylvania Avenue, there was just something I just came across this week. Apparently, on Capitol Hill, Trump economic advisor Larry Kudlow related a story in which an unidentified White House official described Prime Minister Trudeau as, quote, that punk little kid running Canada, end quote. So if you want to know how they see us down in the United States, this is why the tariffs, what is it, Section 232, the 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. National security grounds. They don't care about Canada. They don't care about us. They just want whatever is best for them, and be damned if there's 9 million jobs that are associated to Americans. It's all about them and lining their wallets. So I'm convinced, and it's a song and dance, like you said. And everybody, his whole support, his group's falling for it. So, surprise, surprise.
The idea of it being a movement and the end of an era, and an effect of the end of the baby boom, and then looking before the baby boom to a time where authoritarianism, nationalism, were the talk of the day. And why wouldn't we return back to that?
Well, the only thing that
new generation has to rise to expect something else. This generation is uninterested. And why shouldn't they be? There's a cartoon character, Foghorn Leghorn, running the White House.
Find us on Twitter @ThatArcher, our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
And this whole situation of the 5,000, 10,000 people coming up from Central America, this is all because the Russians and the Americans were in Central America in the 70s and the 80s, and they created the dirty wars, as they called them, back in the 1980s. So again, this is a primary example of what I think in one of the first podcasts that we were doing, and I said, this is, you reap what you sow. Whether it's from bad investment or cutting back on safety or not well thought out foreign policy. Just saying, it could be cyclical, but short-sightedness. 5,000 migrants, 10,000 migrants just don't up and decide to move north just for the sake of moving north. I mean, who the hell wants to move to a cold climate when you're in a tropical climate? I mean, really, we're expecting 10 centimeters of snow over the next 12 hours with freezing rain mixed in there. I mean, I would be wanting to stay in Central America, quite frankly. But when you're motivated by violence and hunger and political instability and corruption brought on by the former Soviet Union and the United States, things got to be pretty bad. So I'm just saying, if you're willing to make a 1,600 kilometer or 3,000 kilometer trek,
painted as an imminent invasion, and it'll take them a month to even just move across the map. I think somebody said it could take them months to get here, and by then there could only be a few of them left. Apparently, their numbers are dwindling.
Yeah, they're in Mexico now. So, and I think I just read this morning that a few of those folks have been granted work permits. So,
well, I think Trudeau should build a wall. To keep these, the chance of any right-wing Republicans, want to move up here. And
well, since being back online, I this week, just prior to the show, I think it was last night or the night before, I went down to Roxham Road just to see for myself where this was, where the people are crossing the border.
Oh.
And into Quebec. And I've been down along that area before, and Vermont and New York State. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country down there. But when I was there back in the day, there was nothing. I mean, there was just a little sign that said, do not enter the United States illegally or something like that. And then on the other side, it said, do not enter Canada illegally. And there was just a ditch, in the middle of the road. And but I looked on Google Earth, and there's a bunch of RCMP cars in the cul-de-sac right there. And then when you go into Street View, you can actually see the illegals, or I guess they're not illegal because they're still in the United States, but they're looking over into Canada, I guess waiting for the Google car to leave so they can make their way in. But there looks to be about 30 people there approximately on the other side of the border, just leaning up against the fence or leaning up against the sign, because there's no fence down there, right?
And were they migrants, do you think, from South America, or were they right-wing white supremacist Americans?
They looked multinational, yeah. So it was very interesting, yeah. It's interesting. I never thought that we'd be having refugees coming from the United States.
Why don't we have our border guards ask? Because they ask all kinds of psychological questions to see if you'll get angry. Did you vote for Trump in the last election? Have the decision be made on that?
Oh, well, I can just, there'd be a fly on the wall in that interrogation. But, yeah, it's interesting. So speaking of elections, so we just had our municipal elections, and what I found really interesting in this is that I really hope that this is not a sign of the future, but that 51 municipalities had to offer either emergency voting or 24-hour voting extension because the stupid electronic voting systems just didn't work properly.
Well, I know that happened in Pickering. There were no actual physical ballot locations. I think it was all on the web, the voting.
Yep.
Whose idea was that?
Every municipality, 440 plus municipalities, had the up or down vote on that. And so a lot of them did, And
so only people who are affluent enough. I mean, how is this any different than blocking votes in Georgia or North Dakota?
Well, the
only certain people who are going to be comfortable or have access or the ability to go online.
So Grey Bruce counties was among them, the Muskoka region. Bradford, West Gimli, up by you, Greater Sudbury, Cambridge, Kingston. They got Queen's University down there. Prince Edward County, Pickering, those Greater Sudbury. The township of Laurentian Valley, city of Pembroke, the town of Petawawa, with the military base there, the town of Renfrew, the township of Whitewater region. So, it doesn't matter whether it was small or large. I mean, these were major urban centers as well as smaller ones that were impacted by this. So,
I don't know.
I mean, we have electronic counting. It's paper, but it's electronically counted. So as soon as you put it in there, they already have an idea. So by 9 minutes after 8, I think, after polls closed at 8 o'clock, they had the count. So
yeah,
it's
but
not
that's
connected
you
to the
going
internet.
to a place.
Yeah, well, that's fine. At least you know it's not going to be hacked. At least you know there's not going to be technical issues.
I think the act of going there is part of it, and you rub shoulders with the other proletariat in your area.
Well, it's a community. It's all about community.
You know.
That's what it is. You're going. It's about community. It's like going
and,
to the market.
And offering it as an option, voting online, golf claps right here. I'll edit it in golf claps, but having that be the only way to vote clearly just takes a whole bunch of potential voters and says you can't vote.
Oh, for sure. No, agreed. I'm not going to disagree.
And that's
with
if it
you.
works.
That's if it works. I mean, I guess we're still in the early days, but I mean, I don't think that. I definitely am not comfortable with having everything online or phone in or whatever, because we had in one region out in Orleans, 17 people ran for municipal councilor just to represent Orleans. So I can't imagine, trying to find that on a telephone or something like that, unless it was on a smartphone and you had the names like a ballot, like you would have when you're at the ballot box. But so
press 17 for Bob. I can't vote.
Yeah. Bob, I can't vote. Well, Bob, I can't vote. Thanks for coming out. And because you voted, you get 10% off your municipal tax next year. Thank you for coming
10%,
out.
10%. That's a big chunk.
Hey, there you go. Carrot or the stick approach. Speaking of which, I just want to touch on the carbon tax and Trudeau bringing this in for everybody. Because I thought there's a few things that I came across here. I mean, because if you listen to the pundits, whether they be on the left or the right or in the middle, well, you're going to pull out your hair. But so for those people who actually care, and we're just going to focus on Ontario for this, so this is how it's going to work. So the average cost next year for a rebate for a single adult in 2019 will be $154, and a rebate for a family of 4 in 2019 will be $307. And in 2022, for a single adult, it'll be $360, and a family of 4 in 2022 will be $718. Now, how this is going to work is that when it comes time to filing your taxes, and so this is for Ontario, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick, just to be clear. When it comes to time to filing your taxes in the spring, you will apply for it in your 2018 tax return. So, if you do it online, you'll have that money plus whatever else in your return a couple of weeks later. So, there you go. And so I don't know. It seems to be a carrot and a stick approach.
Yeah.
You're saying
well,
90%?
One of our previous guests, thanks for listening, in New Brunswick, Chris Rouse, is part of trying to shape and lobby how that money is used and that it goes into the right source. And it's interesting. So, I mean, that is a kind of interesting thing about these consumption taxes. Up front, everybody's paying this tax, but on your tax forms, you can get some of it back. And it kind of means people who aren't paying tax in that municipality get a little dinged. And people who may be tourists, they get a little dinged. And so it kind of, I don't know.
But, I get dinged when I go to New York State.
Yeah.
When I used to smoke cigarettes, I mean, when I bought Marlboros or a carton of Marlboros, I'm paying, Marlboros were expensive. I couldn't believe it. I thought, Florida was cheap. New York State, they were expensive. So, I mean, I'm paying for infrastructure that I'm not going to be utilizing just for the one time that I'm down there. Yeah. So, I mean, the hell with them being dinged.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm for it.
Or the hell, with the people being, or the hell with me being dinged when I go traveling to another jurisdiction. It's like it's
the
for the
spirit
betterment
behind it, where it's, it's not like they're doing it to like clean forms of consumption. So they are wrapping the consumer on the wrists a little bit. They're incentivizing businesses to get with the program. And, if you are a, proper functioning citizen who's filling out these tax forms, you get to have some of it back. So I don't know. I don't know. And then if the money raised were specifically, and this is what Chris Rouse was talking about, only putting that money into helping businesses make better choices, it makes sense, and it helps steer the country away from carbon and towards something better. So he's going to take some heat for it, and, I guess we'll notice it at the pumps a little bit. But, at some point, the free ride has to be over, and we do have to be led towards change. That's kind of the role of government. People who don't believe in government don't feel that way. I think I could trip you up in an argument. You're not for the nanny state, and this is an example of the nanny state taking us by the hand and leading us in the right direction. So how do you reconcile
natural disaster? Well, when a natural, when a human-made disaster is looming, we have to do something because of our hubris, because of our ignorance. I mean, so they're going to raise gas 4.4 cents.
Well, it's nanny state. So what about the seatbelts or helmets?
Again, you can't argue with the laws of physics, and you can't allow a manufacturer to say, or a corporation like Via or Greyhound.
Okay, you're about to be trapped in a corner. Now, what about sugar and salt and potato chips? Where do you draw the line?
I don't think we should be doing anything, because it's about this. You have to be responsible for yourself. Why should I have to pay for somebody's bad healthcare choices?
All right. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but you
No,
see what I've done, right?
No.
You've drawn a line.
I want you to challenge me. This is fine. I have no problems, and I'm being upfront.
You said you couldn't argue with the laws of nature.
You can't argue
and
with the laws
sugar
of nature.
And salt are the laws of nature. We know what it does to you. So why shouldn't we put a tax on potato chips and ice cream?
There is already. I think it's called a junk food tax. I think that's what's out there. But I mean, again, it's everything in moderation. That's what we were taught when we were growing up. And even if you're not into that, if you're into religion, or at least Western Christianity, you're taught, as far as the deadly sins, thou shalt not, what is it, be a glutton or something. So, I mean, this has been going back 2,000 years, 3,000 years they've been talking about this stuff.
See,
so, I mean, if
I
you
don't want to do this
on
on my show. I don't want to corner people and use their words
against you cornered me, and I'm giving you my argument.
I know, but you're kind of floundering a little bit here, and I'm feeling bad for you.
Okay.
But whatever,
sorry.
okay.
Does it sound like I'm floundering?
Yes, it does.
Oh, shit.
And we won't edit that.
Toss me back in the ocean, man. I don't want to be floundering.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. Okay, so
you noticed the carbon tax. It's big in Canadian politics.
The carbon tax. Yeah.
Okay, what got any headlines?
So, let's see, headlines. I got your headlines. So, the weather this year has been quite frightful, my friends. Quite frightful.
And the weather this year
tornado
is
records
frightful.
cost. Pardon?
I was singing a Christmas song. And the weather this year is frightful. And the climate change is delightful. Let it show, let it show, let it show.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Archer, for that nice medley. Good segue. Tornado wreckage costs insurers $295 million. September's tornadoes caused a massive $295 million in insurance costs, making it one of the deadliest Ontario storms this year, but not quite the worst. Seems like you folks in Toronto beat us out.
The ice storm?
You had apparently a really bad windstorm earlier on this year, and caused $410 million in damage, $380 million of that in Ontario.
I remember that in the
two
spring.
People were killed. Yeah,
a lot of roofs were curled up. And
Yeah. And then mid-April, we had that ice storm in southern Ontario, and that caused $190 million in damage. And the 1,800 traffic collisions were blamed on that.
I noticed a news follow-up recently on, was it Global News or something like that, looking at
Dunrobin.
And it looks like nothing's going on there. All the houses are still all on the ground, and, it's not like, I guess we just expect you snap a finger and it all goes away, but...
That's the insurance companies.
Yeah.
It's all they were talking about that on the local talk shows this week, and the delays are because of the insurance companies. So, You know, I could go down that rabbit hole, but I'm not going to. And then there was the thunderstorms on August 7th in Toronto that dropped over 72 millimeters of rain and flooded everything from the Rogers Centre parking lots to Union Station and everything.
Cars floating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we had the same problem here in Ottawa with, I think we had 100 millimeters at one point. It was just absolutely crazy. Then the heat waves in June and July, all over 50 degrees Celsius.
But they continued on into late September, the heat waves.
Oh my gosh, yeah, exactly.
So this is all abnormal.
This is all, and then, but Dave Phillips over at Environment Canada said the worst weather thing in Canada this year, the number one spot, goes to the wildfires in Western Canada. Because we had at one point, over 60 to 100 or more wildfires going at the same time. Right across the province. So, and then, what, the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I'm just from my memory here, they had that early snow in Alberta, and the poor farmers, their crops hadn't even been harvested yet, the canola crops and and everything. So yeah, it's been crazy ass weather. So
maybe some of this will be cited as bolstering for this carbon tax.
Well, I think so. And also, the European Space Agency has just launched a satellite last year, and all the data is coming in now real time. And it's called the Sentinel satellites. And it does almost in real time. It has a mass spectrometer, like the most up-to-date mass spectrometer. And it can globally forecast, it can plot everything from carbon in the atmosphere to aerosols to formaldehyde, that's given off from wildfires and burning paper and stuff like that, to radiation, to you name it, all in near real-time data flow. And they can do this daily. So if anybody has any doubts about global warming, they just need to go to this thing, go to the European Space Agency website, and just check the Sentinel data, and it's all public data. It's open to everybody. So, yeah. And even news broadcasters are using that stuff now in their weather forecasts. So everything went online back in July. So there's no doubt about carbon in the atmosphere or global warming.
Yeah.
So the science is there.
Yeah. And the politics isn't.
Which is just, well, I mean, Jesus. So are you suggesting then, this is what it sounds like, that humans really do have a short attention span, and if it's something shiny and bright in front of them, they'll be led away and over a cliff, as opposed to taking the nice safe path down to the river valley below?
Well, I think we're the vicious ape. And I think that we don't really think enough about the bell curve. And I know that we're not as evolved as we think we are.
No, I agree with you, exactly.
So mix that all up, and then, and this is why we need a nanny state, and this is why we need civility in politics, and this is why we need all these things that seems like big government, like, having outpatient services for people who are having trouble, just like your guy with the white van.
Yeah.
Or any of these people. And Canada's, Americans think, some of them, that, we're immune to all this. And we've got our machine guns in the Quebec legislature and at the Parliament buildings, shootings, terrorism.
But I mean,
we got it all, too.
For sure. But I mean, okay, the nanny state. I mean, look at what's going on. I'm not even going to mention the Premier's name, nor am I going to mention his party. They're legislating. They're going to push through the Quebec legislature a ban on all religious garb, like the niqab and the hijab and all that stuff.
And that's in Quebec.
And that's Quebec.
Now that's interesting, because we turned a blind eye to their Bill 101, where they were essentially outlawed English to protect their culture.
Yeah,
and now their idea of protecting their culture is to exclude other cultures. So this has got to be where you draw the line in the sand on this.
but they have the notwithstanding clause. So notwithstanding human rights infringements, we're going to do this in the name of Quebec culture.
You know?
So, and when somebody pointed out the glaring hypocrisy of the crucifix in the legislature, they said, oh, that doesn't count. So I guess my point is, where do we draw the line with the nanny state? I mean, how many orders have been placed just going from that extreme to the extreme of the Ontario Cannabis Store? They don't respond to the media. They don't respond to their customers. They don't let their customers know that their orders have been canceled. They just up and disappear. Whereas, the little boutique stores, everything was running, no supply problems, everything was good. You give it to the government.
Who buys drugs up front?
Who buys booze up front?
Anyway. I'm cutting your weed shit out, I think.
No. Don't cut the weed shit out. I mean, who goes to Starbucks? It's just as relevant. People don't have their coffee every day. I've seen what people are like when they don't have their coffees. Oh, I got a migraine. I'm going to beat the crap out of you. Shut up. Oh, my God. You hear this stuff. Oh, my God. Fucking whiny little snowflakes. If they don't have their coffee or their tea, their orange pekoe tea or their Earl Grey tea every morning, they'll get into a fist fight. It's just like a bar fight with a bunch of drunks if they don't have their caffeine in the morning. So please, don't draw a line in the sand with that. I'm going to cut out your weed stuff.
You talked a lot of
give
weed
me a
last
break. No, seriously, man. Seriously, we let Starbucks and Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donuts and all these other
Home
monopolies,
Depot. Krispy Kreme.
whatever, fantastic. They handle that part of the drug market. The LCBO handles, that part of the drug market. But keep your hands off the weed. Because the government has shown in the last 2 weeks that they don't know what the hell they're doing. They've
been
screwed
showing
it up
that.
from the word go.
No,
I'm sorry?
They've been showing that on the subject of cannabis for 100 years, so much. Yeah.
No, well, I'm just saying. I mean, because the weed store that I went to, after they made it legal and hard to get, was surrounded by cops yesterday. Okay, and the whole front end, the whole door had been smashed, and there was plywood on it.
Oh. So they had reopened after October 17th?
No, they didn't. They never closed. It's the Compassion Club. It's
All
the
right.
Compassion Club.
All right.
Okay.
So the cops had come and kicked the door in?
I don't know. There was this cop cars around. There was a cop in the westbound lane that had his car parked in the eastbound direction in the westbound lane in front. And then there was another cop car on Augusta at the corner. So they both had a boxing thing, so where the stairs came down. And the whole
sounds like they were
was
busted.
And the whole front, all the glass doors, the glass windows, everything were all smashed up. And that place was packed. I was there 3 times last week. And that place was a lineup. That was like a half-hour wait.
What were you doing there?
Buying weed.
What?
Because I can't buy it online because they don't take debit cards.
That's conspiracy to commit an indictable offense.
That's great. So arrest me. That's fantastic. It's a legal product. You're making it impossible for me as a consumer to buy a legal product. So I will go buy that product. That is legal. If you put barriers in front of me, I will kick those barriers down. If you cannot fill an order, if you cannot take my money from a legal government vendor, i.e. the Ontario Cannabis Store, and you negate to put on debit card option, only Visa and MasterCard, you are cutting out a certain segment of the population. So, ergo, I am going to go and purchase at said store. And, maybe they should concentrate on the people who are bringing fentanyl into the country and killing 4,000 Canadians a year because of fentanyl, as opposed to marijuana. I think that would be probably more appropriate use of taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah. Well, can't disagree.
Just saying, man.
All right,
just saying.
Don't be a sore winner.
No, I'm not a sore winner. I'm just saying, it's not cool. But there was something that was really interesting, just on an interesting note. Things in history that make you go, So this was in the local paper last week. This name might, I'll just bounce this off of you. His last name was von Ribbentrop. Joachim von Ribbentrop, the Nazi foreign minister. So, well, apparently he was living in Canada. He lived in Montreal in 1910. He worked at Molson's bank. Molson's actually had a bank. And then he worked in an engineering firm, reconstructing the Quebec Bridge. And then he worked on the railway as a car checker. And in British Columbia, he was a logger. And then he left Canada, came back in 1913, and he settled in Ottawa. Whereupon he lived downtown at Slater and O'Connor, and then got a house or moved into a house over in Sandy Hill, right near the University of Ottawa. And so while he was here, he opened up his own business selling German wine and champagne and importing it, obviously. And he also helped out handing out presents in 1913 with Santa Claus handing out gifts to kids at the May Court, which is they also have a hospice here now and everything. They're very, very, very reputable club. He also was an accomplished violinist, and so he made his way around Ottawa and over at Rideau Hall, and he apparently had dinner at Rideau Hall quite a few times and got along very well with Princess Louise Margaret of Prussia, the wife of the Governor General at the time, and was able to speak to her in her native German. All this until he had to move back to Germany. So I just thought that was really interesting.
So what war is he associated with?
World War II. He was the foreign minister for Adolf Hitler.
So he returned back to Germany when?
Oh, he returned back to Germany, it says here, I think it was just at the advent of World War I. When that broke out, he was playing tennis at one of the clubs here in town. I think it was the Rideau Tennis Club, it says here. Whereupon he went home to pack, dined at the Chateau Laurier, and left for New York City. A fortnight later, he returned to Germany, where he enlisted into the army, the same unit that his grandfather had belonged to. C'est ça, c'est bon. That's the headlines. That's a wrap for this week. There's more, but that's too much information, and I'm just at an information overload. Oh, well, there is one more thing, speaking of nationalism. Austria, the right-wing government there, I think it's the youngest prime minister or president on the planet right now, in Austria, has offered Austrian citizenship to the residents of South Tyrol, which is northern Italy or southern Austria, depending on how you're looking at it on the map, which is totally just pissed off the Italian government, another right-wing government, by the way. And the reason they're doing this is because that part of northern Italy used to be part of Austria until after the end of World War I in 1918, and it went over to Italy. But everybody in that part of northern Italy didn't want to be going back to northern Italy. They wanted to stay with Austria. And so the culture up there and the language up there, for the most part, is German. And so in the last couple of weeks, the Austrians have offered them dual citizenship. So, speaking of nationalism in European history, the demise of the electric car in Canada is that I think unless they insulate that wherever the battery is, like really well, I just see a lot of cars dying in this cold weather.
Huh.
So
never thought of that. How the Tesla does in northern Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. Well, I just read before you phoned, before the start of the show, that the FBI is now investigating Musk and Tesla.
Really?
Yep.
Great.
So,
who killed the electric car?
Wow.
It's a conspiracy theory.
Exactly.
Yeah. I kind of dig Elon Musk, but he bites off more than he can chew, and that's a thing, and that's how shit gets done.
Well, that's it. Look at SpaceX. Exactly. I mean,
one could say maybe the government should jump in with a bit of a helping hand and a bailout down there to help push that forward. But no, they're going to FBI him, so we'll see how that
I agree. I mean, how long would it have taken, with all due respect to NASA and Morton Thackall or whoever these companies are, Lockheed Martin, whatever, it was Musk and his engineers that had a returning rocket booster landing on a bloody platform in the ocean and eventually on land.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't NASA. It wasn't Lockheed Martin. It wasn't Boeing. It wasn't Northrop Grumman or any of these other companies.
Yeah.
It wasn't General Electric. It was Musk and his engineers.
Wow.
So I'm just saying, it's hooray for free enterprise and capitalism sometimes.
Find us on Twitter @thatarcher. Send us an email, archer@twxnet.com. For guest links and contact info, visit our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Find us on Android and Apple Podcast apps. Subscribe and rate the show on iTunes.
I'm Dave Archer in Toronto.
And I'm Ian Stolberg in Ottawa.